Welcome back to the podcast. I am your co-host, Joni McKeague, and with me, as always, are my longtime friends and co-host, Nolan Chang and Jared Shirai. Say what's up to the pod, boys.
What's up, everybody?
What up, boys? And girls.
Could be girls. Say there could be girls. All right.
And
We're going to go
people,
ahead.
and people.
Yeah, exactly.
Letters.
We're going to, especially after that last episode, we definitely got to clean it up a bit. Anyway. We're going to go ahead and get the ball rolling on today's episode of After the Buzzer. We're going to break down Game 6 of the NBA Finals between the Boston Celtics and the Golden State Warriors. As, spoiler alert, the Warriors have won their fourth NBA title, defeating Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics.
I don't think it was that he didn't give his heart to it. He just was not involved in any part of the mismatches that really needed to get covered. Mm-hmm. We kind of mentioned it, and I will say, if this game had gone to the Celtics, if it was a repeat kind of statistical box score as in Game 7, I would give the Finals MVP to Jaylen Brown.
Agreed.
We kind of mentioned it last. I think it was you, Keone, because you were the one who were kind of giving the points on why or how the Celtics will kind of take care of the Game 6. Horford showed up finally. We saw him in Game 1. He comes back for Game 6, which is nice, but too little, too late. And Steph Curry, he
seemed to be the theme for the Boston Celtics. Too little, too late.
Yeah,
I was like, it seemed to be the theme. Yeah. Can't say that in the mic. Anyway, Jared, I'm gonna swing it over to you. Obviously, he's hit on everything that happened with the Celtics. What did you see from the Golden State Warriors that they were able to just completely pummel the Celtics in the last 3 games?
The last 3 games, I mean, Steph was Steph, but I think he got a lot of help in a sense. They locked down on defense. They worked on their rotations. They kind of fought over screens in senses of like not having to force mismatches in certain aspects. In Game 6, I would say Jordan Poole showed up. I think Andrew Wiggins basketball. We expected the Game 6 Clay, but at the same time, like you gotta understand, like Klay Thompson can be Game 6 Klay scoring wise, but I think he did it on defensive end. Like the things that we talked about being a step slow, like locking down on that side of the ball and allowing Steph to just take the offensive load. Like it allowed them to work to I wouldn't say the best of their capabilities, but like the best of their team ball at the way they move things around, Steph very deserving of it. I mean, I still got that thing out for like I wish Wiggins, because like both sides of the ball, locking down defenders. Yeah, he's not scoring 30 points for you, but he's super consistent. Most consistent player that's been out there on either side of the ball. Like either side on offense, defense, on the Celtics, on the Warriors. Like he's been the best player in my opinion. But like you gotta tip your hat to Steph. He came off a 16-point game, dropped 34, 12 of 21. Like he just did what was expected of him.
Currently, I'm just going to read off some things that I took note of as I'm scrolling through many of the random places that I have the NBA being followed. Tatum being called out by NBA Twitter. GP celebrates with dad. What a awful season for the Celtics. Poole and Wiggins want to get paid. Steph Curry emotional as he finishes out the game. Steph is the unanimous MVP, and Dub's big 3 is special. So I'm reading all of these things, and then of course on top of that we're having all of these other headlines talking about where this dynasty finishes as far as the Warriors dynasty, because now technically they're considered a dynasty. They have hit their 4th NBA title in what I believe 6 NBA Finals appearances, with this
Uh,
current team.
yes, I think
I
Yes.
believe they
ooh,
lost one to LeBron, and
Yeah.
then they lost one to.
to the Raptors.
They did
Yeah,
5
it's
in a
their fourth.
row, and then
It's
they
their
came
fourth
back
title
this year.
in 8 years. It's their fourth title in
So
8 years,
yeah, so
basically. So
we're
in a ten
sitting
year
here
span.
talking about where the Golden State Warriors are, but then the flip side of the coin is all of the antics that we've been seeing. Nolan talked about a little bit about how Clay was not being humble after the conversation, and I think for the last week, it's been, or not week, I would say a few days since the finals had concluded. We've seen nothing but you know Draymond Green going off about all of the Twitter receipts that he kept. Clay Thompson going off on all of the Grizzly Twitter receipts he kept, and then we're seeing um, Steph Curry, is he now officially within the top five all-time greatest players to play the game? And I have to ask, is this all overreaction to the Warriors? Do you think that there is an asterisk of any kind to their championship this year? And on top of that, is this a true dynasty? Obviously, I think it is, but I'd like to swing that question over to Nolan. So
I have my thoughts on if I really consider this a dynasty. I think I don't remember we were doing yay nay. We didn't really give our thoughts, but I forgot which one I gave. I might have said yay. Um, Thinking back on it now, I might be leaning more towards nay. The last three championships that they've earned, if you remove Kevin Durant from the first two and you remove Andrew Wiggins from this one, um, I don't know if you can say that this Warriors team is a dynasty if we're basing it off of the Warriors core that has been there for so long, that's built up. A lot
so
of
before I'll say, before
yeah.
you
Sorry, go
continue
ahead.
your thought, I'm gonna say, so do you think that there is actually an asterisk to the win this year because of Andrew Wiggins?
No, because if you look at it this way, the championship this season was deserved because the team that was on the court for this season earned that championship. But to say that the Warriors are a dynasty, I'm having a little mixed feelings on that because, not saying that they didn't deserve to win the ones that they did prior, but Kevin Durant was a big factor. And I don't think anyone would say, yeah, Durant was part of their dynasty. No, Durant came in, got his chips, and then dipped. Um, Wiggins, different story. He got traded in last year, so I give them a lot more credit with him. He isn't someone who just kind of came in and everyone knew he was going to be the difference maker. He deserved his flowers this season because of how well he played in their system and what he did for them. Um, but it's hard for me to say that it is a dynasty when there are so many factors for the last three or four championships that they've gotten.
Um, I would say I am kind of in the same boat as Nolan. Like, I do not think it's a dynasty just yet. I know they have the what four core players. Sorry, Draymond, Iggy, Clay, and Steph. Um, Iggy played very minimal minutes. So I would say it's a three. But at the same time, like Nolan's biggest point for me is it's not Andrew Wiggins this year, but it is Kevin Durant. If it was a dynasty, like how we talk about Michael Jordan being a dynasty, he had six MVPs in those 6 years, and that's why they're a dynasty. Kevin Durant had two. He said he came in, got his chips, and he left. The year before that they, not the year before, but the chip before that they got, Iggy had it, and Iggy really didn't have the biggest like role in this. So you had players that were there. Yes, they were a big part of the system, but if in my opinion, if it was gonna be a dynasty, Steph Curry, Clay Thompson, or Draymond Green, in my opinion, need to have an MVP somewhere in those two championships that Kevin Durant took. And going forward, like you don't want to take away from it, like from this year, because like we've talked about in past podcasts that each player that has been on this roster deserves what they got because they put in the time, the minutes, and the grind
They work
last
for it.
year when they didn't have the three of them. The three of them, Draymond, Clay, Steph, they all went through injuries. And all these players learned to step in and play big roles, and this is the biggest payoff that you can see going forward. I would say like if they can retain a lot of it, I would love to see where they're going to go. They win another chip back to back. I mean, that's where we can start to get into that. that kind of conversation, because this isn't, like Nolan said, this isn't the greatest team in the four chips that they won. It's not. Like, let's just go down the line. You got KD, who's can score from anywhere, probably one of the biggest offensive threats of all time, almost, I would say. You had Steph in his prime prior to that. You had Clay kind of in his prime. We talked about Clay all playoffs. Maybe he didn't have the best offensive output, but
So,
he's slowly
before
getting
you
back there.
continue, are you
Hmm.
basing your reasoning for the dynasty on the fact that they weren't in their primes at the same time, or are you? I'm confused. What is the?
I
Are you
would say
saying that
more it's
they're
like,
not they're not a dynasty because they weren't on the same team when they were like at their peak?
I would say, like, when you look at a dynasty, you look at, like, kind of what MJ did. MJ, Scotty, like, they were factors, like huge factors, and MJ got the MVPs in all those years. You know, you talk about the Spurs when the Spurs kind of went on their little run of everything. Like Timmy D, he was kind of right there in the middle of
It
it.
was
Like,
always Parker, Monte,
yeah,
Timmy. It was
yeah,
all
and
it was always
those three
them.
were the biggest factors. Like, and I'm not saying that Steph and Clay are not, but at least one of them got MVPs in those aspects. Steph finally got his at the end of this. So maybe if they're going forward, if they win another chip and he gets another MVP, yeah, that's a great conversation to have because he has five now. You know, but like Kevin Durant literally came in, and I honestly think he's the reason why they won those
I feel
two
like LeBron would have
championships.
2 more rings potentially if
Yeah,
Kevin
if
Durant
if
wasn't on
KD
that
doesn't
team.
come in, I 100% agree. And I don't think like a lot of the moves end up being made.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not gonna lie. I was not expecting either of those takes. I'm gonna say the complete opposite. I will say that the Warriors are a
And you're
dynasty.
wrong, so
Do I think that?
You're entitled to your own
Here's
opinion.
why I think both of your opinions. Here's where I'm having trouble with both of your opinions. For Jared specifically, I don't think necessarily that the fact that Kevin Durant came is the only reason they won. I'll say that. I think that you can also argue the fact that obviously the Cavs had the injury season. You know what I'm saying? Like there were other reasons for them losing those for the Cavs losing the series in that game. On top of that, I don't think that Kevin Durant and he's already shown the fact that he can have a great team and he can still not win. So I would say that the argument can be made that they weren't necessarily known as the key component, but they were known as a very large component because really the
absolutely, yeah.
gravity that both Clay and Steph, attract is unfathomable. You cannot even calculate how well they do that just being a threat. They don't have to actually score, they don't actually have to win the MVP. And I think the argument can be made that in at least one of those years Steph Curry had at least kind of an argument to have won the MVP. Yes, Kevin Durant was probably one of the top players in that entire series, but would he have been that way without all the attention that was being spread out? Because when he came in, I think Clay was at his peak. He was defending very well. He was shooting it even crazier. Obviously, Game Six Clay came from somewhere, and it came from those series, along with the series before where they won without Kevin Durant. And then on top of that, I think Draymond Green is another consideration for why they should be considered a dynasty. I think the reason I'm saying they are a dynasty is because one, you can't argue the amount of chips that they've won in as many years. You can't say that for a lot of teams.
Hmm.
I mean, yes, we just happen to be the fans of some of those teams. Obviously, the Lakers, are one of those teams that had six in or five in as many. Five, right? Was it six? No, it was six that Kobe had in his career in his lifespan of that team or whatever. Right? Was it 6-5?
Oh no, yeah, six. No, it's five,
Five?
7 visits to the championships.
Yeah.
There we go.
7 visits.
So I'm saying what I'm saying, I guess, is that yes, I guess you could say that are the teams that we're fans of. Obviously, we had those points where they had really great runs, but like where my team is now, they're clearly nowhere. I think we cannot, you know, dismiss the fact that their current run is one that not many teams have, and not many teams will have. Just for them to have gotten to the finals as many times as they have
So
in the
let me
last
ask you this then.
decade.
What defines a dynasty?
See,
What is
that was going to be my question, my follow up question to the both of you, because I would think that a dynasty team, as we're looking at, why the Warriors are a team. One, obviously, it has to be championships. Nobody really cares about where your team is at. Like, if the Bulls were amazing, but they never won the championship, I don't think it would have been the same. You know what I mean? It wouldn't have been the same gravitas for what they did in those 10 years or whatever, because I mean, they obviously had a lot of accolades within the players on the team, but if they hadn't won, would we be talking about them as a dynasty? We wouldn't be. You know what I'm saying? And I could say the same for the Lakers, could say the same for the Celtics, could say the same for the Heat, I guess, at one point, because a lot of people were talking about, was that team a dynasty? But really, if you break it down, how many championships do the Miami Heat have in total? You know what I'm saying? Even the greatest team that they ever assembled, that everybody considers to be a dynasty, they only won two. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though they were only together for not as many years as the
4 years? I
Warriors
think
have been together, they
5 years,
only
4 years.
won
Yeah,
those two
two.
championships. And the argument that is made pro Miami Heat for them being a dynasty is the fact that they defeated better teams. Even better teams than we've seen some of these other teams beat in the finals. I would say even some of the teams that the Bulls beat in the finals. You know what I'm saying? The argument was made that the Heat beat a super stacked Spurs team. They beat a who was the other one that they beat? Was it Spurs twice?
They
It's been a
lost
while.
to
Yeah,
Spurs once and beat the Spurs once.
yeah.
OKC they beat and they
OKC was
lost
OKC
to the
was the other
their
one.
Mavs.
first title.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha. But so that's that. I guess that's where I'm going with this. Is that I think, based on where the media sees dynasty teams, and realistically, if we're breaking down what the media sees as a dynasty team, and they consider the Miami Heat a dynasty team, I gotta give the Warriors at least that. Like, I don't. There's a lot of things I don't agree with as far as the Warriors, where they're placing Steph as far as all time greatest players. How they're placing this team in general, or even the team that had Kevin Durant, where they place that team all
But
time
so I would say
as.
like I do have an argument in regards to I mean you brought up great points on why you do consider them the dynasties, but the one thing that's been consistent with every single team that media fanship has always seen franchises as dynasties is that in all their runs in championships, they never had someone new come in who was a better player than the team that they already had. Kevin Durant made that a difference, and
That's true.
that's neither here nor there sometimes because obviously Kevin Durant made that decision. It wasn't like they traded for him to make their team better. He decided to sign with them. They could have gone to play the Cavs again in the finals, and who knows, maybe they would have won those two series without Kevin Durant. But that's why, like, it's hard for me to call them a dynasty when they didn't have to, but they bolstered their power in comparison to any other team that's been considered a dynasty. And that's why it's like, obviously teams go through different rosters each season. It's always changing. But I
So
don't think there's
would
ever
you
been a
would you say that Rodman wasn't a bolster for the Bulls when he joined them for the
and they
second
won
half?
three together. So that
Mhm.
three alone could be considered a dynasty separate from the first three. So it's kind of
Oh,
like
so you're so
You're just
okay.
winning three. You're winning three back
There.
to back to
Now I
back
get it.
too.
Now,
You know,
okay.
it's
So
like
I
it's
think I'm
straight
getting
through.
where your guys' train of thought is. So your consideration for the dynasty team is not the team itself. It's more this trio of guys who have been on all three or all four championship teams.
kind of, you got to take that into consideration a lot of the time
Hmm.
because
I mean, then you put it more on the coaching staff, like because Steve Kerr is the
yeah,
reason why they're a dynasty. You're not
yeah.
taking the players per se. Like,
Well,
I
then
mean,
I was just saying, I think
in my
that's a great
opinion,
point why they should be right, because I
yeah.
mean, having Steve Kerr at the helm, is you could argue that him being the way he is, adjusting the team to being a team ball first type of team, and basically leaving wide open, running these screens and all these other things that he does on the court, the X's and O's portion of it, and you could say that him, along with the team, or at least the trio of guys, um, could be a dynasty.